The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place with my partner, Ian Parker. I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
It is UFC pay-per-view time from the Honda Center in Anaheim, California, where we will watch UFC 298, a main event between Alex Volkanovski taking on a red-hot contender in Ilia Topuria. Man, I am excited to talk about this pay-per-view card alongside my good buddy Ian Parker and his good buddy. In fact, if you've watched this show before, Ian has told the viewers multiple times that he and Chael are essentially best friends. I have always had my doubts about that. Well, now we got the man himself to confirm or deny. You and Ian Parker, good friends outside
Confirmed, absolutely. My favorite man in gambling, along with yourself, I must say.
All right. So all good.
Part of the club now.
All good friends up here on the ESPN set here in the Honda Center. We are going to be talking about UFC 298 from a gambling perspective, but before we do with the gangster and Ian, we are going to look back at the UFC fight night, see how we did at the Apex. Walk us through your picks, Mr. Parker.
Best bets recap. We went 4-1 last week. Great night, especially with Max Griffin at plus 135. Again, that split over Jeremiah Wells. Adolfo Vieira, he made that look so easy. And I said with the prop, go for sub. He did that. Michael Johnson, he almost got Michael Johnson in the last 35 seconds. But outside of that, he came through. Bryce Check, I was very surprised he could not land on Ilia Topuria. But last but not least, Dan Ige, he sent Andre Fili to the Shadow Realm and us to the pay window. 4-1, pretty good night.
Atta baby, 4-1 with a plus money, 135 included in there. All right, let's look at UFC 298. I already talked about Volkanovski versus Topuria. We're going to talk about that at length. But man, what a great main card. We got Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa. Haven't seen Costa in a while. Very, very intrigued to see what he looks like. Jeff Neal and Ian Machado. Gary, that's going to be a heck of a fight. Merab Dvalishvili, Henry Cejudo, big stakes at 135. And then Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on Roman Kopylov. But we will start with the main event, as always. And Chael, I wrote a story here on ESPN, and I know that Volkanovski's pretty sick of this, that he's actually, kind of alluded to it. He's had some fun with it. He's dressed up as an old man. But the stat is very, very real. 2-23 UFC fighters in UFC title fights of the age of 35 and older. 2-23. The only man to ever do it at 170 pounds or lower was Tyron Woodley. He did it twice. And one of those times, he was actually fighting Damian Maia, who was older than him, so I don't even know if that really counts. So really, this is a stat that seems to have some real, weight behind it. Do you put anything behind it?
Well, that's an interesting stat. I mean, I would say the whole thing is a riddle, right? I mean, you've got a guy that's 14-0 taking on a guy that was woken up in his last contest. Oh, by the way, the guy that was woken up is the one bringing the very title they're fighting for. I mean, the whole thing is very confusing. You can go back through history and look at boxing. You try to show me somebody that got knocked out in their last contest that's going to beat a younger fighter, you're not going to find an example. Oh, by the way, he's going to find a guy that's won his last 14. You're not going to find an example. But it is a little bit different. Look, the only thing that's got anticipation up, the only thing that sold this arena out, and the only thing that's got this line so close is the fact that Volk took a kick from Islam. Volk is better than Topuria in every possible facet of the game. He has shown better grappling, better wrestling, better conditioning. He has shown more heart. He's shown more grit. He's won more rounds. I don't say that to put Topuria down. I just remind you, Topuria got to this position, and he got to a fight that is very anticipated because we saw that Volk could be beat. He was the closest thing to invincible, to not having a kryptonite that we had. Now we know that that isn't true.
And listen, he's having a little bit of fun. He's having a lot of fun with it, and he's had, the great video on Instagram and everything else. You saw him walking up on the stage there talking about Volkanovski. But I will say, I agree with a lot of what he said. I mean, Volkanovski has proven a million times over, more so than Topuria. But you talk about the lower weight classes. I mean, it's never been done. I mean, I just said the stat. I mean, Tyron Woodley's the only guy to do it, and he did it at 170. You're talking about 155, 145, 135, 125. It's never been done, 35 and older. And so it's like, I hear everything that Chael is saying, but does it give you any pause that, like, hey, maybe 35 in these lower weight classes, it makes it very, very difficult to do.
Why at age 34 was he the GOAT? But at age 35, he's old and washed. To Chael's point, he lost to Islam Makhachev. He came off the couch. He was drinking. He wasn't training. Islam said he's taking a payday. Maybe he really was, because guess what? If he loses, he's still the 145-pound champ. I think Ilia Topuria, this isn't a knock. One day he will be the champ if it doesn't happen tomorrow night. But I think this is also a product of lack of depth and not wanting to go through the gatekeeper, Max Holloway, that Chael and I have talked about ad nauseum at this point. Look, Volk has done everything right along the way. How come against Yair, in between the Islam fights, fights. He looked incredible. That wasn't even a year ago. So let's not talk about him being old and the trends. This isn't the NFL. This isn't home field advantage or when this coach has this day. I don't believe in it. This is what makes betting in MMA that much more special. I think Volkanovski has everything he could do to win this fight for Topuria. Outside of Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett, he never fought Calvin Kattar.
Nope.
He never fought Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Nope. Any of the top guys. So what makes it all of a sudden think? Because what, he's got knockout power? Volk finished Korean Zombie. He finished Yair Rodriguez. I think Volk gets it done in this fight. I think he wins. But my bet on this is going to be over 3.5 rounds. I think this is going bell to bell.
Okay, over 3.5 at -135. Chael, one more question for you. When you look at Topuria, I mean, there is confident. There's maybe even arrogant. And there is whatever Topuria has been. I mean, the way that he is talking about Alex Volkanovski, do you like it? Does it come across as genuine to you? Does it come across as what do you make of his confidence? Because he certainly has a lot of it going against a guy, to Ian's point, that we were talking about, maybe was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter last year.
I do take him as sincere. Am I completely convinced? No, look, we're going to see 11 fights on this card. None of them are any different than this one. Both fighters going into it know right now who's going to win. They just don't let us in on it. The guy that's going to lose this, he knows. He's in his hotel right now. He knows he's going to lose, but he doesn't let us in on it. So if you're a handicapper, if you're a fan watching, you're watching those interviews. You're watching that body language. You're trying to determine who's trying to convince us, who's trying to convince themselves. It's very different. The great fights that go down in history are where both guys truly believe they're going to win. I think that Topuria thinks he can beat Volkanovski. That's a lot to bite off, but I do want to share that with the audience. Like, when you see a guy that's confident, a guy that's brash, half the time he's trying to convince himself still.
Yeah. One more thing before we let the gangster get out of here, because he's had a long day of work here talking about these UFC 298 fights, and then we'll walk you through the rest of the card. Ian, you made your pick at over 3.5. You did not make it Alexander Volkanovski, and I am wondering, I'm asking myself, how come? Because if you believe in Volkanovski and you believe that Topuria is not proven, then you're basically saying, like last year, we're getting a ton of value. We're basically saying that, like, we are getting a -125 because of the circumstances and not because of the two fighters in the octagon. So what is holding you back from firing on Volkanovski?
This is why you're such a good host. I actually am also going to take Alexander Volkanovski. I just wanted to throw out that over 3.5 just to get a little bit of our beak sweat here. Look, with Volkanovski, it's hard for me to picture with Topuria. I agree with Chael. The confidence here, it's great. There's one Conor McGregor. Stop trying to take the belt, put it on you. Stop trying to convince us. You got to go in there. And he says that he can make mistakes because Volk doesn't have power. Ask Yair Rodriguez. Go ask the Korean Zombie. Go ask Chad Mendez if this guy doesn't have power. I don't buy it. Give me Volk to win and over 3.5.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll revisit this in Ian's picks later on. But for now, we will say goodbye and thank you very much to Chael Sonnen for giving us some insight on the main event. And from the main event, we will go into the co-main event. Robert Whittaker taking on Paulo Costa. And here they are. At the stare down here, and you get a chance to see them. These two were kind of in rumblings. Of course, they were going to fight in Australia. Paulo Costa, he was injured. There's been some sort of, kind of questioning how much does Paulo Costa really want this fight at times. Ian, Robert Whittaker coming off of probably, you got to say, right, the worst performance of his career against Dricus du Plessis. But hey, all of a sudden, Dricus is the champion, so that loss looks slightly different. What do you make, general thoughts, big picture on this co-main event?
Well, look, I understand a lot of people are going to probably want to jump on Paulo Costa. He's got the athletic build, the power. He's smiling. He made weight. This is the best I think we've ever seen him look in front of the camera.
Yeah.
However, granted, Robert Whittaker did fall short to Dricus du Plessis, who's now the champ. I still think Robert Whittaker is one of the smartest fighters, one of the most successful middleweights to ever do it. And I used to say outside of Israel Adesanya, Whittaker would be the champ. Clearly not true because he lost to du Plessis. However, outside of getting potentially knocked out here, I could see Robert Whittaker really putting on a master striking class, using his cardio, because we've seen that Costa can get a little bit tired at times, but he's also extremely durable. So for me, if you're going to take Robert Whittaker, that number is a little high. I like him to win by decision, and you're going to get a much better number than -240.
Well, you're right about people wanting to jump on Paulo Costa here, especially at this line. From our ESPN stats department, 84% of the bets right now on Paulo Costa, 86% of the money on Paulo Costa.
Interesting.
A lot of big-time Costa believers over Robert Whittaker. Again, coming off of the worst performance of his career, so I think it's not too surprising that people want to jump on Paulo Costa. Let's go through the rest of this main card, and we go to the welterweight division. Jeff Neal taking on Ian Machado Gary. Very, very interesting fight. These two have kind of jawed back and forth. It has become maybe, I think, a little bit personal, especially for Jeff Neal. I think he wants to make a statement here. Does he get it done as an underdog against Machado Gary?
I don't think so. Look, what Jeff Neal brings is toughness. He's got a lot of power. We saw it against Rakhmonov. against Shavkat, this guy doesn't go away, and it is hard to get him down. Shavkat didn't get him out to 10 seconds left in the third, but this is a different fighter in Machado Gary. He likes to dance around. He uses his striking. He moves that movement, that footwork. I think in this fight, Ian is going to stay far away enough to get a decision win here. He's going to stay out of trouble. And I think he's on his way to the top. He's very good despite all the craziness on the microphone.
Okay, so some confidence there in Machado Gary. Let's talk about Merab Dvalishvili, who takes on Henry Cejudo. Very, very interesting fight at 135 pounds. Big stakes, as I mentioned earlier. Henry Cejudo has come out and said, hey, he's done if he can't get it done against Merab. So is this the last time we see Henry Cejudo?
It is. First off, the pride of Mexico, Merab. You got to love that. Merab's been great on social media all week. Listen, I think Merab's a future champ. I've been saying since he stepped foot in the UFC, there are very few guys who could come in here, keep their foot on the gas pedal, and just be really, really good as well. His striking's gotten better. His wrestling is nonstop until he takes you down. If you are not prepared to fight a full 15 minutes at 100 miles per hour, you're not beating Merab. And I think for Henry, unless he gets a lucky shot here, this stylistically is a terrible matchup for him. Merab, and by decision at -140, I absolutely love that. That is going to be my prop of the night. Give me Merab.
Merab looking like an absolute lovable psychopath on the scale. I love that. Okay, let's talk about Fluffy Hernandez. He takes on Kopylov. We have taken, I believe, Kopylov before as maybe an underdog in the past. Fluffy coming in at -245. What do you think of this matchup?
This line is insane to me. Kopylov at +200. I'm taking that. Listen, Hernandez, the key is going to be to get the fight to the floor. But Kopilov's takedown defense has gotten so much better. He's trained with Habib, and that striking is nasty. If he can keep this fight standing, +200 is incredible value. I'm going with Roman Kopylov here.
We have been doing this for too long, man, because I am reading your mind. We really do not talk about these picks prior to, and that's why I brought up that. Why are we not going with Volkanovski?
Literally.
I feel like we should be going with Volkanovski. You're like, well, we are later on. And the Kopylov, I knew it as well, and I like that. +200, I also think that line is, I was a little surprised when it came out. Not that Fluffy was the favorite, but that maybe a -245. That is the main card. You can find it, as always, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Let's talk about the prelims. Ian, fire away, rapid fire. What are we doing with the prelims at UFC 298?
Let's do it. Start with Amanda Lemos and Mackenzie Dern. I'm going Lemos here. She's a power striker. Dern did terrible against Jessica Andrade. Taking this fight on short notice, we're going with Lemos. DeLima, now this is a story. First taking on Justin Tafa, now Junior Tafa. Listen, Junior Tafa, good striker, but off his back, he's almost a negative white belt in jiu-jitsu. And DeLima, if he gets his fight to the floor, it's over. Nakamura, -1300. Inside the distance at -200. I think he's the real deal, but the only way to play this is at that number. Give me Ribeiro, +105. Kinlan Barlow, you got two really tough guys looking for the knockout. Sometimes when that happens, you get a lot of respect, a lot of hesitancy. Let's go over 1.5. Oban Elliott inside the distance against Val Woodburn. We saw Woodburn against Bo Nickel, and he did not look very good. Oban Elliott's extremely tough. And last but not least, this line, Brett, also threw me off. Andrea Lee at +155. Not to take away anything from Miranda Maverick, but this is also going to be my long shot prop of the night. I can see Andrea Lee in a scramble, taking the back, getting a submission. So for the first fight of the night, +1400. Let's go Lee by submission.
I like that, man. I'm getting really excited. This is a sick card that we're going to have at UFC 298. Here we are in the Honda Center. It's Friday. We're going to see these fights here in a matter of about 24 hours. Where are we going with the parlay at UFC 298?
Ian Machado Gary, whether you love him or you hate him, he is so talented, and this fight is meant to showcase his skills. We're going to take him as the first leg. We're going to go Merab and Oban Elliott, +165, a three-legger. Let's hit it this week, and let's get some money in our pockets.
Let's hit it at +165 on the week. And how about the best bets for UFC 298?
Brett, I went back and forth for a while on this. I originally had Marco de Lima, had to replace him, with the whole number getting a little crazy. So let's start off with the main event. Over 3.5 rounds. I think this fight's going bell to bell. I think Volkanovski's going to chop at that lead leg of the boxing style of Topuria. So I'm going to double down here. I'm also going to take Volkanovski. We did this with Nasruddin Imavov, where we went over and we took him. I'm doing the same thing here. Whitaker Costa, I'm surprised this number's low at over 2.5. Costa, very durable. Whitaker is not much of a finisher himself, and he's going to be very weary of the power of Costa, over 2.5. Let's go Machado Gary to win by either decision or by KO or TKO. Okay, we're going to probably get around -200 there. Amanda Lemos, I just think the power in the striking, if Mackenzie Dern can't get this down, she gets lost and she gets knocked out, -135. And Andrea Lee, I'm taking +3.5 points, meaning she just has to win one round and not get finished. I have a hard time thinking Miranda Maverick is going to 30-27 her.
How about that? A +235 knockout shot on your best bets, man. I love that very, very, very much. And I love this, too. 32-1 with the long shot parlay. How'd you put this together?
Give me Whitaker. Give me Merab, -3.5, meaning he's either going to sweep the cards or get it done. Roman Kopylov and Andrea Lee, those lines are off. I think those are 50-50. If we hit the long shot this week, the last 2 weeks have come down to one last leg. I believe this week is the week.
Man, I mean, I enjoy talking about fights every week with you, man, but, man, we had Sean Strickland and Dracus Duplessis, great fight in Toronto, and now here we are. Volk dressing up like the old man, all the narrative that's going in it. Very, very, very hyped up, confident contender in Ilia Topuria, Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa for the first time in over a year. This is a sick card, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And hopefully we gave you some good gambling advice. Put some money in your pockets. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit him up at Twitter. He'll be giving out gambling advice throughout the entire pay-per-view. And enjoy the fights from Anaheim, California. We will see you at the next UFC Best Bets. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the weekend.